What's the sickest way your family kept you bonded? Every night at dinner, my parents made me and my brother drink each other's blood from wine glasses because they believed it kept our family bonded at the cellular level. I was 8 when the ritual started. Dad would sterilize needles over the stove while Mom set out the special glasses with our names etched on them. They'd draw exactly 2 ounces from each of us, mix them together, then make us drink while they watched. If we gagged or spilled, we had to do it again. My brother was only 5 and would cry every time the needle went in, but Dad said tears were just weakness leaving the body. They called it communion and said other families were falling apart because they didn't share blood. The ritual got more elaborate as we got older. They bought medical equipment to draw larger amounts and started storing extra blood in the basement freezer for special occasions. On birthdays, we had to drink pure blood instead of the mixed kind. They documented everything in journals with our iron levels and white cell counts like we were lab experiments. Mom homeschooled us so no one would see the needle marks, and Dad worked from home to monitor our health. They said we were the strongest family in the world because we literally shared everything. By the time I was 15, the needle marks had scarred into permanent tracks on both arms. My brother developed anemia, but they said it was just his body adjusting to sharing iron. I tried refusing once, but they held me down and used a feeding tube to force the blood down my throat. Another time I poured the blood out when they weren't looking, but they'd installed cameras and made me drink double the next night as punishment. When I threatened to tell someone, they moved us to a farm town where the nearest neighbor was miles away. My brother started getting weaker when he turned 13. He'd sleep through classes and bruise from barely bumping into things. Mom increased his iron supplements and doubled his blood portions, saying he needed more family connection. But I knew something was really wrong when his gums started bleeding randomly, and he'd wake up with nosebleeds that wouldn't stop. I snuck him to a walk-in clinic pretending to be his guardian, and that's when we found out. He had hepatitis C, and his liver was failing. The doctor asked about IV drug use, and I almost laughed because the only needles he'd ever seen were the ones our parents stuck in him every night. I tried to tell my parents, but they accused me of making it up to destroy our family bond. They said no disease could survive in blood strengthened by love and unity. When I showed them the test results, they burned them and increased our nightly portions to fight off the infection with family antibodies. They started adding herbs to the blood and making us drink it warm because Mom read that heat killed viruses. My brother got so weak he couldn't walk to the dinner table, but they'd carry him there and prop him up for the ritual. 2 months later, I started feeling sick too. Same exhaustion, same bruising, same bleeding gums. I didn't need a test to know what had happened. Years of drinking his infected blood had given it to me, and our parents had probably been spreading it between us the whole time. When I confronted them with my symptoms, they celebrated, saying it proved we were truly united now. A family that shares disease shares everything, Mom said while preparing that night's glasses. They started drawing blood from our necks when our arms got too scarred and infected to use anymore. I made one last escape attempt when my brother collapsed during dinner and didn't wake up. While they tried to revive him, I ran to the neighbor's farm 5 miles away and begged them to call 911. But my parents had already told everyone in town that I was schizophrenic and off my meds. The neighbors drove me straight home where my parents were waiting with a straitjacket they'd bought online. They said my delusions about disease were tearing our family apart and I needed intensive treatment. They locked me in the basement with just a mattress and a bucket. Every night they'd bring me down my glass of blood. They'd hold me down and force my mouth open, pouring it in while telling me about my brother's miraculous recovery upstairs. But I could hear him crying through the vents, getting weaker every day. Sometimes I'd hear him calling for me and I'd scream back, but the soundproofing muffled everything. They started adding sedatives to my blood portions so I'd stop fighting. I'd wake up with blood dried on my chin and no memory of drinking it. On the 7th night in the basement, they brought someone new, a little girl, maybe 6 years old, with the same dark hair as me and my brother. She was holding a stuffed rabbit and looking around with terrified eyes. "Meet your new sister," Mom said, pushing her forward. "We adopted her yesterday. The family bond must continue." Dad was already setting up the medical equipment while the girl watched. They'd put a child-sized chair at our dinner table with a new glass waiting. "Don't worry, sweetie," Mom told her, stroking her hair. "Your big sister is going to share her special blood with you tonight. We're going to be the strongest family in the whole world." Dad turned to me with a needle in his hand. "You're going to help us welcome her properly, aren't you? Or should we tell her what happens to children who refuse to bond with their family?" Full story on the channel below.